Hello, hello?
Yes, it is on. All right. Welcome to our January 13th Monday work session beginning at 4:30. Just to let you know, we have some public hearings tonight, so the regular meeting will need to be at 6 p.m. on the dot. There are 2 items on our work session tonight, so I'll call the meeting to order. As I look around the table, do I need to do a roll call? Hello, hello? No roll call. We're all around the table this evening. The first agenda item is to provide an overview of the website redesign project by reviewing the overall process, timeline, and deliveries. Dan Cotterman, ITS Director, and Shireen Zaya, Communication Manager, will present. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Mayor and Council, we're excited to be here this evening to finally talk about the website redesign project. With me tonight, as you mentioned, is Shireen Zaya, our Communications Manager, as well as Janelle Salcido, our Project Manager for Vision Internet. I'm going to go ahead and give a quick overview of how we got to this point in the project, give a little history, and then I'm going to turn it over to Janelle to introduce herself, the company, give an overview of the process that we're going to go through and the expected timelines for that process. We hope to keep the presentation fairly brief so there's plenty of time for council discussion and questions at the end. And as always, feel free to interrupt us at any point if you have a question. Nope. I'm missing a slide here, sorry. Okay. So assume I'll just cover the topics here.
Just go back on. There we go.
All right, thank you. As you know, our current website is outdated. It's difficult to navigate. And lacks newer technology support like social media integration. Those are all things we've been dealing with for a long time now. And council decided that this was a priority and included this in the funding for fiscal year 14. And so the first step in this process was we sent out a survey to council and key stakeholders on staff to ask them, what is it that you want to see differently in the website? What do you like? What do you not like? Are there any other websites that we should emulate? And so we got that feedback, and then based on that feedback, we went and researched what other municipalities were doing. And what we found was that there was a clear leader in that space, and that was Vision Internet. And so once we made that determination, we formed a project team. We have members of IT, communications, and then representatives from every department. And so those department representatives are not only going to be assigned to the project, they will own that content for the departments going forward so that we can keep everything current and it doesn't get stale and stagnant. I want to point out what our goals are for this project because the term website can be kind of vague. And so we have 5 goals for this project I want to cover briefly with you. The first is to create a new design with an updated look and feel. Something that looks like it was built this century would be good. And we want to improve the website's navigation and ability to find information. We want to improve mobile device support. So we want to make sure those users who are on tablets or smartphones are able to view the site. We want to update all of our content and make sure that it's current and relevant. We want to implement new technology that allows us to integrate with other systems in the future. So the initial phase of this is not going to be integrated with everything, but what's going to be left at the end of the day is a system that is highly integratable with other systems that we can continue to add on features in the future. So now that we have a vendor selected, a project plan, a project team, we thought it was an appropriate time to come before you this evening, introduce you to our vendor, give an overview of the process and the timelines. And before I turn it over to Janelle, I want to let you know that she has to leave here this evening at 5.
That's what I
heard. So if there's any important questions or discussion items that you want to bring up while she's here, make sure you do that early in the presentation. So with that, Janelle?
Great. Hello, council members. Thank you for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Janelle Salcido, and here I am to cover several items as he spoke about here. I come from Vision Internet that's based in Southern California, there in Santa Monica, and we're very experienced and privileged to be a part of your website redesign. Taking a look here at the screen, I'd like to tell you a bit more about our company. Since 1997, we've been involved in almost exclusively recreating government websites. And so over time, we've been able to establish this, art and science to creating a brand new website for the public. And so with that said, we have more than 500 city clients, including City of Atlanta, City of Sedona, and also a City of Tempe. And so with each one of these cities, we've been able to take a look at what makes a city unique. And what are the existing problems now? We hear a lot of times about, the lack of easy navigation, or, things that just need to be updated, or maybe the background is just not as easy to use for non-technical staff. And so taking all those into consideration, we've been able to create this CMS backend that is especially useful for government websites, no matter the technicalities or familiar of being technical or not, and whatever really the day is or century, it will still be able to be updated really easily and quickly. And so with each one of these cities, we have this backend, but at the same time, we also have these custom designs for each one of these cities. And we've received many award-winning results with them. Taking a look at what we've completed in the past, we have, oh, I'm sorry, that wasn't the next slide. Just covered this. It's covering about some things I just spoke of. It meets your long-term needs, and at the same time, it's been proven nationwide with several different government projects. I was taking a closer look at ones that we've completed. Oh, I'm sorry, that's right out of order. Well, the way that we do this is taking a look at each one of these stages. This is our implementation process for each of them. So at the moment now, we are actually in the concept stage. Earlier today, I met with your staff, and we were able to see, what's wrong with the website, which ones we would like to improve, and or which things that we'd like to improve. And together, we've developed an outlook of what items that we'll be covering, particularly the information architecture behind your site. Why are certain pages take 5 clicks to get there, and how can we make this information more easily available to the public? And so with that said, we are at this concept stage design now. We'll still be establishing that main navigation so that we can take a look at what exists now and then reorganize it under that new main navigation, ensuring that things can be found in 1 to 2 clicks at the most. And so here at the concept stage, we've completed a tentative layout, and moving on forward, we'll receive a final approval, and from then on, we'll be going to the design stage, which is the next one that you see on the screen. And here we'll actually be applying colors to it, and seeing what best represents what represents your city. And so that's something that we are going to take a lot close attention to, finding the right pictures or the right colors, and really having unlimited revisions until we have this exactly right for you all, to have a site that you're both happy and proud of. So here at the design stage, this tends to take some time, but we're looking forward to your input at various stages, to eventually have something that we all really like. And then thereafter, we will be going on to development stage, and this is where we actually literally program your website. And that's according to the new main navigation that was given your final approval, along with the design that was approved as well. And after development stage, we'll be going on to QA and testing stage, and that's where we, make sure that everything's perfect, and maybe that we would like to switch the pages and then sitemap to a little bit better. We thought this would be the way that would work out best before, but so maybe a department or someone else would like to change their mind, and that's very easy to do. And so after we complete the QA and testing stage, we'll go on to the soft and final launch, and that's where we'll go ahead and give your site a soft launch, and then eventually when you're ready, you can go ahead and have your domain ready to go to the brand new website, and that will be a very exciting time. So this is our process that we've used in the past. It's a tried and true formula, and going on as the designs that we've done in the past. We have Sedona here, something we're particularly proud of. One of our cities that we've done here in Arizona. And here is Cupertino, Westbrook, Bend, Oregon. This one is my favorites because we can see that it's a very woodsy kind of city, so we made sure to incorporate that in the design. And that was particularly important too because they just turned out so great. the same time, we also have Reno. Yeah. And this is also, may I point out, here we see this big graphic and there's a big search bar, and that tends to be what trend is now for government websites. A lot of the sites are going towards this direction of having huge graphics to be able to show off this on the city and its landmarks, and what makes it unique. So going forward, also have Park City, Utah, and this is a great one. You can see the landscape to that. We also have different organizations too that we do sometimes. So here is a water example, and Hermosa Beach. So several different designs, all of them unique, and all of them unlimited revisions until we finally get that right one. And here is one of our most recent ones, is Provo. This is Provo, Utah. Here is an example of a layout that we've done. This was created organically. After several different discussions with your staff, this was created on the fly. And once this is in place, this is when we put colors on it. So this is just an example of a work in progress. So once we completed this for Victoria, Texas, and ended up going to this. So once again, if we'd like to just review that really quickly once more, here was a wireframe, it's very much of like a skeleton for a website. It's purely just for the mock-up and the placement of things. But once we apply colors to it and go through several revisions, of course, we'll eventually arrive at something close to this, but for your city. And here we have a mega menu that we're looking forward to having for your site. This is something that's quite popular to find information very quickly. I understand that's also something that we're looking forward to fixing. And here a citizen can go to find services and immediately go to one of the options that are listed below, without having to navigate through anything else. And another picture. And here we have Tempe. It's another local neighbor of ours. Okay. And Eau Claire. And here you can see the citizen-focused functionality here. Again, a mega menu is going to make a big difference in being able to find what you're looking for, no matter what it is.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, real quick.
Sure.
Back to the one with Bend. That wasn't the front page, though, correct? That was once you got into another section.
The given screen here is what happens when a person hovers over departments on the main page.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And again, that's where we are now. At the implementation process, we're just at the concept stage and still developing, what's to come. So thank you for having me here today, and I'm looking forward to any questions you have.
Oh, thank you. Questions? Vice Mayor Fazola?
Listen, I appreciate this effort. I mean, it's been not the easiest website, obviously, to navigate. Some of my concerns, though, and I'm sure you've heard this before, is from the customer standpoint, the ease of locating things. Obviously, that's number one. But I always like it also, too, when I'm getting into the website, things that are hot topics for us that we may want to have a button or somewhere to go to. For example, things that are time sensitive. Say, for example, we're changing the trash collection. Instead of have to work its way down through departments to find out when that schedule is, there's hot topics and I don't know what you would call it, but somewhere where they go right to that button, click it, and it goes right to that item that we want to do, as opposed to searching through various different departments to get there. And that's just one example of something that might be time sensitive. But I think hot topics, things that are time sensitive, things that you want to get out to the public, even if it's for recruiting people for some of our appointments for the commissions, somewhere where they can go click it and there's the information for them instead of navigating through. Right now it gets a little more difficult on some of those type of things. So just for my 2 cents worth, that's what I'd like to see in a website.
Oh, would you like to answer that?
Yes. Council members, Mayor, today we went through a lot of those types of issues exactly, and during the wireframe process, that's one of the items that we made sure was part of that homepage is either in the spotlight or hot topics or
Okay.
whatever you want to call it, kind of time-sensitive, timely issues that are bigger topics that will get the attention of visitors that go to .gov, and so that they can click on for more information.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes. Oh, Molly, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Molly,
If I may have 3 questions.
I'll allow you to have
Thank
three
you very
questions.
much. The first question is, when will we see the product as a council? Will we see it as a finished product, or are we going to see it as a work in progress? That's my first question. Dan?
I think we're looking for a little feedback on that.
Dan,
Okay.
could you speak up a little bit, please, because we're recording this?
I think we're looking for some feedback and guidance on that tonight, because clearly you can't have 50 people all select what the final design is. That gets a little difficult. And so we've selected a smaller team of staff who will participate in that, and so we need some guidance tonight on how much involvement you all want to have in that once we are down to a handful of options.
Okay, and my next question is that this is the design team that's going to design the website. Who is going to ultimately be responsible to update it on a daily basis or whatever it is? Our webmaster?
So we have somebody in communications that will be responsible for the main site content.
Just one person?
I believe
Councilmember Campbell, what we have decided to do is put together what we call web authors. So there'll be a group of individuals throughout the city. Those were the members that were invited to the kickoff meeting this morning. We asked each department director to please identify 1, 2, possibly 3 different individuals within their department that would be responsible for that. So during this process, we are not only including them and soliciting their feedback in the design of this new website, they'll also be responsible for maintaining the content. Now, different people within the department and throughout the city will have different levels of access to what they can and cannot do on the website. Ultimately, the webmaster will have kind of free range, the highest clearance, if you will, to do what he wishes. But different people throughout the city will have the ability to go in and maintain and update their content. And so we do expect that to be the responsibility of the different departments to maintain the.
So like for mayor and council, then someone from mayor and council staff would be charged with updating whatever we have for us, right?
Correct. Yes. This is correct, yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure that whatever we do, that we are able to update our website quickly without going through a lot of hoops. Because if it takes a week to get something important on the website, we're not quite doing what I think we would like to have done. I know it can't be instantaneously, but we've got to have some flexibility to get that information out as quickly as we need to have it done.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
So thank
And
you.
the departments, we want them to be as self-sufficient as possible with that content.
That way you can ensure that the content's correct. Yeah, so
Absolutely,
thank
yes.
you.
Jerry, go ahead.
I have a couple of questions. When did you update Tempe's website? When did you guys do that one?
I believe that was sometime last year.
Okay, yeah, because I had been on it before, and it was very difficult. I don't know if anyone, but it was almost like ours, very difficult to navigate. It's much easier now, so I didn't realize you had done that one. That so far turns out like that. That's a good thing. And then when I think this kind of piggybacks on Wally's question with some of the updating and everything. Can't really remember what I was going to say. I think she did. See, I shouldn't have waited now. See?
I'm sorry. You're making me feel good again.
Come
Thank you.
back to me.
I'm telling you guys, you're catching up. I know.
I'll write it down.
Bill?
Okay. Maybe this is what you were going to say. Regarding the departments maintaining, the concern that the very first thing that I think of is, okay, great, we've got this standard website, and now we've got 15 departments that are going to get to make it their own. So I'm seeing you shake your head. So some consistency with the author's ability is very reassuring now that I see your head nodding.
Councilmember Stipp, if I could just reassure you, I had the same concern. So when we walked into the meeting this morning, that was one of the things that I confirmed with Janelle, was to say, can we maintain some sort of consistency? And she assured me that, You can't select your own font. You can't kind of create your own colors. You can't kind of do that. There will be an element of consistency throughout all the content
Great.
on the pages.
Yeah, because I can see creative just getting out of
Correct.
control.
Yes,
So
yes, agreed.
Do you remember? Go ahead.
the other question that I had. Oh, she remembered. You want me to just
She
pass it to you
remembered
right
the
now?
question, so write it down
Write it
quickly.
down. The feedback that you're looking for tonight, as far as where we're going to go, we kind of said we need feedback, and then it stopped. I'll give you mine while I've got the mic on, and then I don't need to be involved until we get very close to the end. I mean, that's just my personal opinion, and I'm good with whatever the rest of the council wants to see. I'm looking at our consultant, who doesn't look very much older than my daughter. Which for me with tonight was the realization that I am officially at like past a certain point in my life, but that's a very good thing. So I am not any smarter than anybody certainly that you're going to bring in. So whenever you get to a point where you think it's appropriate, I'm good to go.
Now, Sherry.
Now I remembered. I'm done with my blonde moment. Yeah, as to Bill's question, first of all, I would like to see it personally as we get through to different stages to kind of, you can mock up and just kind of show us, just to keep us informed. I don't think you need, the committee of us designing the website, but I think it'd be good for us to see how it is, because we know what some of the problems were when people would say we can't get to certain things, and just kind of see. Now, with this website, one of the things I thought was kind of really hard with our current website was pulling up documents and minutes of meetings and finding out where that is. Is that something that will be easier on this?
Oh, yes, very much so. There will be a page where the meetings and agendas will be automatically posted, and once they're entered, of course, but that is something that is one of the favorite features of our CMS. And so not only will you be able to see these agendas, whether via HTML, so as a web page, but also as a PDF with all of the attachments associated with that agenda attached automatically thereafter. And, sorry.
Sorry to jump in here. So we use a service called Granicus and Legistar to manage our meetings and agenda and minutes. And so the tool itself is capable of what she just said, but we have to make a decision, if we wanted to change that or not. And so as of right now, the plan was not to change that. So it's something we can consider in the future.
I guess mine was, it's just hard to find it and get to there. That's the problem. And then find out where the current ones are through that if you don't know where to go.
Oh, yes.
Or the website.
Every single page on your current site is taking a look at. So we'll be seeing, if there's a way to see, why does it take this so many clicks to get there? And so when overhauling your new site, every single page will be indexed in a way that under the new main navigation makes a lot more sense. Every single page will be given that same kind of consideration. Mm-hmm.
Joanne?
Thank you. This is one of those situations where my other hat is coming into play, and marketing is, I'm a retailer, so marketing is something that I'm seeing on the other side of this outreach. And I would say that, number one, customer ease and functionality, of course, is probably one of our biggest goals for this. But a couple other things, and I had attended in November the National League of Cities. They had a leadership conference on managing the municipal message, and where has everything to do with stories and things like that, but also somewhat of website. And a few websites that we did look at they had looked across the nation at different websites, just as obviously you guys do. But some of the fun things that were pulled out of some of the websites was, I just thought I would tell you real quickly, was a guest book out of one of them, where they actually, and it was, this is funny, Beulaland, Beulaland.org, they have a guest book that people would go in and sign in when they were checking out, that city. Another thing was also, they would have YouTube videos, part of, like tours of City Hall, tours of the ballpark, tours of, different sites that we're proud of in our city. And so they would actually, the YouTube...
Surprise has that on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
They actually had the mayor doing, a YouTube
Not a dance,
video.
I hope.
No. But of City Hall. And taking them into, this is the finance department, this is, just showing them the different departments and, introducing some people. And it was all about telling the story, quite frankly. And I guess, and that was one of the other things, was it's not always Goodyear telling the story of Goodyear, but it's others telling the story of Goodyear. So if you had the chamber, or you had GPEC, or you had someone that was telling the story of Goodyear, people tend to listen to, oh, well, you know, we're not the salespeople pitching our own sale. It's other people also. But also driving the connectivity to our Goodyear website. So obviously Goodyear tires, you know, may come up, and we may have to, you know, fight for them over the Goodyear name. But, you know, that the links that we have to some of our partners should be part of what we're also thinking about. You know, if we have a page, if we're linked to Estrella Mountain Ranch, or we're linked to Greater Phoenix Economic Council, and vice versa, they have our link to our city website. So those are just things that I'm thinking of as we kind of, you know, broaden our horizons on how we connect with each other. So that was my little spiel.
Thank you, Joanne. Any other questions? Sherilyn.
And I may have just missed this, but I would like to ask, is there a time frame we're dealing with?
Yes.
I didn't hear that either.
Time frame.
No, I heard her, but I didn't hear a time frame either.
Well, we are hoping to have a final, basically that last cube, be at the final stage of rollout in April sometime.
Oh, awesome.
Good. Any other questions? Joe?
Just with Bill, as far as I want to see when you get to the final draft. Don't have to be involved in the day-to-day details of the drafting. But when you come up to the final piece of what it's going to look like see some type of presentation. Because again, my biggest thing, I agree with, you know, Joanne as far as the marketing, but also the ease, and also, you know, remember we're dealing with customers, as you know, out there. The ease of navigating, and also a quick way to get to those time sensitive is kind of mine. And just as important, because we've had some issues with that, the department information updated. You know, I mean, and I shared that with the city manager when I first came on board. Some of those were way outdated that was posted in those departments. So we got to make sure somebody's checking that to make sure that is updated.
Councilmember Pizzillo, thank you. Vice Mayor Pizzillo, excuse me.
Yes, you can go ahead and say that.
Yes, we have taken that into consideration. Part of this process is, and this morning, as we shared with our joint committee, was to make sure that they do go through all of their content and make sure that it's up to date, that they've deleted any outdated pages so that we're not transferring basically old data onto a new website, you know, still out of date but looks pretty, wouldn't really be useful. So that is part of the process. And then also what we're hoping to integrate into an overall longer process is that these web authors are held accountable for updating and maintaining these pages. And we're hoping with the help of our webmaster that he does follow through with that.
Okay.
Sherilyn?
And this is maybe more specific than what you're asking tonight, but one of the things that I had a problem with when I was appointed to the subcommittee for the commissions and the committees was that we did not have a description. We were asking people to sign up for them, but there was not a good description of them. And I have a feeling that may be the case in other similar circumstances, like maybe some of the things we do at parks or stuff that have to do with the public. And so that's one thing I would like to see, that it's on the website currently, but I feel it's incomplete, that we might eyeball that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Bill?
Just to follow up on Joe's comment regarding a return work session, personally, I think some of the things that we do in small groups with, you know, an actual computer that we can sit at with a big screen may be a better venue than this.
Okay.
That's just my personal. It gives us a little bit. We can touch it
Yes,
rather
I
than
agree.
just watch it.
More personal time, hands-on.
Yeah, and it won't bog down, you know, valuable staff time for us to be. I'm going to say be entertained, and I don't mean that in a derogatory fashion.
Well, I'm going to close the question time and just thank you so much for coming. And you can see it was something was really needed. There have been a lot of requests since I've been on this council, and you can see it's even increased. So We're looking forward to, I think, the final date and seeing the final product. But is it ever a final product? Because you're constantly making changes on this, I can see, because that's what we want to make sure happens, that it's a constant progression.
Right.
So we think we're going to get you to the airport on time. So
thank you.
once again, thank you very much.
Thank you so much,
you.
Council. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, the next item on is an update on the city's draft transportation master plan. David Ramirez, city engineer, to present. David? And David, looks like you have people with you, so would you do the proper introductions, please? I will say there's a familiar face in the group. Two familiar faces.
Okay.
3.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Thank you for the opportunity to present an update to the Transportation Master Plan. City Traffic Engineer Luke Albert and I have been working with HDR for planning and engineering services. And tonight, leading the presentation is Project Manager Michael LaBianca at the far left. And he'll be assisted by Transportation Planner Faisal Chowdhury and Bicycle and Pedestrian Planner Laura Patey. We hope this presentation will be informative, and we'll try to keep it brief so that there'll be plenty of time for questions and answers. And feel free to ask questions of any of us throughout the presentation. So I'll turn it over to Michael.
Thank you very much, David. Can you hear me all fine? Okay, good. Mayor Lord, Vice Mayor Pizzillo, members of the council, we're very happy to provide this update to you this afternoon on the transportation plan. As we know, this is an important project to the city. It's being done in concert with various other planning efforts, including the general plan and the Parks and Rec plan. We're very aware of those efforts and have been working with them, and we're going to talk a little bit about that coordination today. If I may advance the program. So briefly, the agenda today is going to be to talk a little bit about how we got to where we are right now. And then we're going to talk about the plan for improvements briefly. And while they're listed there as separate items, I want to assure you that we've really looked at this as a multimodal plan. So we're really considering vehicular needs of the city as well as the pedestrian and bicycle and transit needs as one. Really looking how those three specific areas of transportation interact with each other so that you do have a multimodal system. And then finally, we're going to close on next steps before we'd be happy to answer any questions of the council. This graphic shows our generalized schedule. As you can see, it's about an 18-month project, and we are about 2/3 the way through. So that red line indicates where we are today, and we're in the process of making our initial recommendations. This process started with a data collection, understanding the city, looking at what's been done before as far as previous planning efforts. We've worked very closely with a technical advisory committee. We call them the advisory group. We've met with them 4 times to date, and we've shared with them information at each step and gotten their input. In fact, one of the members is in the audience today, and several of the members are also serving on the general plan committee. So it's provided a good feedback between those two efforts, and we've appreciated their input to date and look forward to continued input from that group as we go forward. This just highlights some of the events that are going on now, and we anticipate through the close of the project. You can see that this work session is highlighted in red. We recently met with the General Plan Committee on December 10th, shared with them where we are, entertained their questions at that meeting, talked a little bit about the coordination with that effort. We've been working very closely with staff in understanding the recommendations that are coming out of the General Plan Committee, the policies and goals, and making sure that we're consistent with them and that we're working towards ultimately the vision that the city has. We had a meeting with the subcommittee in December also where we shared with them these initial recommendations, and we've received input from them on a number of these, and we'll be incorporating those as appropriate. And we're looking forward to a public meeting in February February 11th, actually. And at that meeting, we'll be looking for the input of residents and stakeholders in the project, and we're looking forward to that as well. Just a little bit of background. As I mentioned, we started about a year ago in this process, and at that time we were able to piggyback on the general plan open house meetings. And I know members of the council attended many of those meetings. We attended all of them as well and had a table, if you will. We had a little survey that we were asking people questions of, but also just interacting with them and talking with them. I had an opportunity to be there with several members of the team representing the trails, transit, and the engineering side, and so we all sort of got the perspective of residents. And a couple of things that we heard about that we're responding to in the transportation plan happened to be bicycling. People were very interested in bicycling.
I'm not saying anything.
Both on-road and off-road. And when I say off-road, I mean trails riding or multi-use paths not on the roadway system. We heard a lot about transit and an interest in transit, and I know that you had a work session last week where you discussed transit, so we're going to just touch briefly on that tonight, but understand that that's a topic that's before you currently. The Loop 303 was an important transportation element, if you will, that was brought up. Both the timing, the importance of that project, but also the specific physical location of it, where that will be constructed going south of I-10, what that looks like for the future of Goodyear. So that was a very important topic that was discussed. And then truck routing. Specifically, we heard from several residents about concerns regarding truck traffic on Saraville. And so that was one of the elements. It's included in the handouts that we provided you, and we're going to talk briefly about that tonight as well. The impetus for planning, of course, there's the vision that the city has. There's the quality of life that you enjoy, that residents come to Goodyear for, the business environment. There's many things that bring people to Goodyear. And one of the things that we're looking for in a long-term plan is what does that mean for the transportation network going forward? And so on this slide, you can see the growth projections. This is a reflection of the Maricopa Association of Governments adopted projections. We actually delayed the project a bit so we could wait for the most recent socioeconomic projections that came out from MAG in September. And so they shared that information with us, and so our recommendations are based on the most recent socioeconomic projections and traffic forecasts in the valley. And so this reflects that. And the reason I put this up there, I just want to point out that you can see that on the upper graphic, the green area represents that population south of the Gila River. So you can see while today it's a small percent of the overall city population, it continues to grow. And by 2040, it's anticipated that 40% of Goodyear population will live south of the Gila River. And so that's going to come up again a little later in my presentation as we talk about some of the transportation needs, but I wanted to point that out. This graphic is from the existing conditions report. So as I mentioned earlier, the plan is built on both the input of residents, stakeholders, our advisory committee, the needs, and then previous plans. And so we did a lot of data collection. We collected new traffic counts from over 70 locations in the city, and those are both roadway segment counts happening in between intersections, but we also looked at a number of key intersections within the city and looked at those traffic counts as well. And we did that for a number of reasons. One, we wanted to look at the traffic forecasts that are coming out of MAG and sort of ground truth them with what's happening today, because our baseline for this study was 2010. We looked at the most recent census information and we tried to baseline there. And we wanted to look at traffic counts today to make sure that those projections made sense and that we could calibrate the model, if you will. And this this exhibit was interesting. This is an existing conditions report, and it shows the impact of a spring training game on traffic on Estrella Parkway. And so while you see the bars representing our typical daily traffic by hour in the city on a weekday, and the red line indicates that traffic occurring on a game day, if you will. And so you can see that peak 2 hours prior to the game time and then 2 hours following, showing traffic. And none of this represents a problem for the city. The roads handle that traffic well. We look at sort of the generalized look at things, and of course you're going to have periods of congestion at any intersection, but overall there isn't an issue with the traffic. But this is just one of the ways that we're able to use the information and sort of dig into things a little bit deeper. One of the deliverables, if you will, of the transportation study will be an expanded city synchro model. The synchro is one of the tools that the city staff uses to evaluate intersections, set things like green light times, turning times, and also make determinations as to when additional turning bays might be needed and that type of thing. And so part of our effort was expanding that synchro network to include additional intersections so that the city would have a stronger tool looking forward to evaluate traffic operations.
I think the citizens would appreciate that. We've had a number of responses lately about the intersections. So.
Okay. I mentioned some of the studies that we looked at. Here's just three in particular. On the left side of your screen, you can see the Loop 303, and that's the portion that is north of the Gila River. And of course, construction is ongoing now with the 303 and the intersection of I-10. And planning is currently underway for this particular section moving forward, although it's not expected to be completed down to the future SR30 or I-10 reliever until sometime after 2026. The graphic on the right shows that portion of the 303 that is anticipated in the future. And again, that's a study that's underway. Our project is not looking at siting the Loop 303. We're moving forward with the recommendations for a location that's in your current circulation plan and planning around that. But right now, this study is underway to evaluate the alternatives done by another entity. I think ADOT is moving that forward, and so obviously that's a project of importance. And as I mentioned, it was an issue that came up when we met with stakeholders and the public in the February public meetings. And then finally, the Sonoran Parkway, an important project in the southern planning area, and that EIS was just recently published as draft, and so we're considering that information as well. What's not pictured here, and you're probably familiar with, are the Hassayampa framework study. And then probably most important is the 2003 circulation plan from the general plan, which has subsequently been updated and most recently amended in 2010. And that's really the baseline for our work. We're really building on that. And I have to say it's a good plan. It served the city well. And so we're looking primarily at implementing that plan, the recommendations for timing, and then looking at some of the finer details of it and making recommendations regarding that. But that's really our starting point. Travel demand modeling. I mentioned the traffic forecast. So these are graphics showing the 2035 level of service for the city using the MAG projections. And what you'll see on the right there is a northern planning area. As I pointed out earlier, with the development to the south of the Gila River, we are anticipating congestion across the Gila River looking out at our planning horizon. The graphic on the left shows a more detailed view of that southern planning area. You can see some of the congestion issues. Now, what's not shown in that southern planning area is the extension of Cotton Lane, which is part of the Estrella Mountain Ranch ultimate plans. That's not programmed through 2035, but obviously improvements like that will come with development will offer some relief. But this is just kind of giving you an idea of some of the traffic that's forecast as a result of that growth in the southern planning area. And this kind of brings it a little more in focus. You can see from our traffic forecast, the Gila River crossing. So today we're seeing about 15,000, and that's including both the Bullard Avenue crossing, Estrella Parkway, and the Cotton Lane. But we're anticipating that those daily crossings will continue to grow through the planning horizon significantly, causing some challenges for connections that we'll be making recommendations to address going forward. So I know that we included in the agenda packet a list of improvements. I'm not going to dwell on these slides. You have a table, and you may well have specific questions about them. But we looked at 3 planning horizons, a short term, which is 2020, and a majority of the improvements are intersection improvements, and they're due to capacity issues. I will point out that many of the projects that are listed in this short-term plan are actually in the current city CIP, or are being considered in the infrastructure investment plan.
Joanne?
That's what I was going to ask, to see that they mirrored each other or that they were in conjunction.
Yeah,
with
so
each other.
Mayor and councilperson, we've been working closely with staff on the latest iteration of that study. I know that you've been looking at that as well, and so those are reflected in the plan recommendations. The midterm improvements are focusing to a great extent on the Gila River crossing, so looking at making improvements to address some of the capacity needs for the southern planning area. And so that's a big part of what we see as a midterm being out to 2025 to address some of those needs. And then finally, long-term, we're looking at improvements focused on Loop 303, a new segment of the Estrella Parkway in the southern planning area, and then generally just improvements throughout the city to sort of develop the network and to meet those future transportation needs. I mentioned truck routing, so we've looked closely and worked with staff on the truck routing needs in the city, and one of the priority projects that you'll notice is Bullard Avenue. Currently, the city is looking at improving that southern section of Bullard Avenue, tying it into Estrella Parkway, and that's a project that we anticipated would be completed sometime in the fall of 2014. It's an important connection to make, and then further on in our short-term planning is that northern connection north of Van Buren to address that gap so that you have a continuous truck route from the I-10 to Estrella Parkway, ultimately MC-85, and your burgeoning business development in the MC-85 corridor to support those business needs.
Joanne?
Quick question. It does look like you're evaluating it possibly, but the McLean's southwest there off of McDowell and which, well,
About 144th.
144th or
Yeah,
so,
something like that.
the truck traffic, is that being evaluated as how its impact is on McDowell and the future mall? Is that thought of at all in these evaluations?
Yes, Mayor and Councilperson. So we are looking at that as it's listed up. Bring the map up here.
I see the dotted line. But.
Yeah, so we are evaluating those truck route needs west of the 303 and north of McDowell to address those
West
needs.
Of 303,
It's
but
gotta be
this
east.
This is east of 303.
I'm sorry, east and west of 303,
Like between
north of
Litchfield and
McDowell.
Bullard, I would say. So.
Yes, yeah. So one of the things that the city has asked us to do is to look at the Estrella Falls proposed mall in more detail. And so we're revisiting a Kimley-Horn study that was done in 2006 to evaluate the traffic impacts of that project. We just recently, when I say recently, last week completed new truck and traffic counts in the area of I-10 and McDowell and turning movement counts that we'll use to, I mentioned the synchro model, and I don't want to get too into it because Faisal's really the person that can address those types of questions, but they look at modeling what the traffic impacts are in addition to the truck impacts and making recommendations specific to the proposed mall.
I just visualize Arrowhead Mall with McLean sitting there and how that's all going to work together. So that's why I'm
You don't want
asking.
another Bell Road.
So that's why I'm asking. Thank
Joe?
you.
Just as a follow-up on that, I lived in Arrowhead when the mall went in, and they had 3 lanes of traffic. And when the mall came in, they had to add another lane. And what happened was they even made it worse because they're adding a lane, and then all of a sudden they're shrinking it in to work on that lane, and it just created a bottleneck on traffic there for a while when they first opened it up. I appreciate you looking at that traffic again, because my concern is once that mall gets in and that $1.2 million worth of retail goes in there, whether that roadway is really wide enough to take all that traffic. So, and I've seen it firsthand in Arrowhead, so I've got some concerns about that
And then we
myself.
want to block it.
Yeah,
And-
right. So I appreciate you looking at that.
Wally?
I should have asked this earlier, but I wasn't sure you wanted to be interrupted.
Oh, I'm sorry I didn't mention that.
Yeah,
Please do.
I wasn't sure. My question is the data collection process, you were using traffic counts to update a study from 2008. That's 5 years ago. So how current are these traffic studies? Because the traffic has increased, I think, a lot.
I think you misunderstood. He used that as a baseline
Well-
of what it was before, but then they redid it, so they know.
But what I'm asking is for the city, do we only do a traffic count every 5 years? That's what I want to know, and that's what I'm and it's probably not to, it's probably to David Ramirez.
One of
But
our staffers.
I'm just concerned that we need more updated information, because I'm not sure that we know how much traffic goes on all of our streets, just the main arterial streets. I'm not worried about the small ones. But I mean, you can't wait for 5 years to count it and then just say, oh, we suddenly have 15,000 more cars a day and we're not prepared for it. So that's what, when I saw 2008, I was a little concerned that we're not being proactive enough in estimating what's coming. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, is what is coming once that mall is up and running. So how did you justify your truck figures from 2006 when you said you were checking that? What did you do, just add a couple of thousand?
No, Mayor Lord, Councilmember Campbell, and the staff may want to build on this, but we were directed at the start of the study to recollect traffic counts on most of the city streets. So we went through a process in March of this year, collecting over 70 new traffic counts at locations throughout the city to address just the concern that you're raising. So we are using current traffic counts.
Oh, good.
And that count has been conducted in February and March 2013. Those counts has been conducted in February and March 2013.
Okay.
And the point that he raised, I can also add that that's exactly the same reason we are doing some of the traffic counts for to evaluate the impacts of the STRF Falls malls. And that count is ongoing now, and we just had it last week.
Last week, okay,
Yeah.
good,
So
thank you.
just to make sure that we are having the most recent updated count with the most accurate information.
Okay, it's easy to project what you think, but we really need to know what it is and then be ready.
I guess I'm curious, and this is just uneducated in this realm, but how do you differentiate between a truck and a car if you're not having on-site counting? Okay, so I see the strip across the street. So could you explain that?
Sure. There is actually a tube they place on the road, and that tube has sort of a pneumatic sensor. So it depends on the weight and also what kind of vehicle and how frequent, because the spacing between a vehicle car versus a truck wheels are different. So those pneumatic tubes can actually automatically calculate what is truck and what is car.
So basically, David, what we have is that we have a certain portion of time that we know when trucks are going on Bullard. So when people tell me at 4 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, during the count time, that would register that. So that would kind of confirm some of our problems we're having before the roads are changed. So that's my question. Do we use that information? Or could we use that information for responding to citizens?
That the vehicle counts and truck counts would give time of day information.
Okay, so if
that
I
would
said
be
to you, or
available.
if a council person said, David, we would like to know a truck count on Bullard, okay, because we're getting many complaints about the 4 o'clock, 2 o'clock time. You could tell us within a certain period of time. It wouldn't be exactly current because the count was probably done at a different time. But it would give us at least an average, or we would have some idea. Is that available?
Yeah, the way traffic counts are conducted is it collects traffic counts on every 15, it continuously keep counting, and it records the information at every 15 minutes interval for 24 hours, sometimes it's 3 days, sometimes for a week long. So basically, it's just a way of looking at the data and extract the information that
Well, I didn't know we had that information, so I probably will be visiting David and ask some of it for it. So that's good to know. Thank you for the explanation. Wally?
And Mayor Lord,
Can
if
you
I could-
count bicycles?
The way we are collecting, the bicycle count is not part of this. We didn't ask for this bicycle count for this particular study, yes. Not through the 24-hour tube count.
Okay. So if a bicycler is on the street, he still goes over it. He's just not registered.
He is, but since we are mostly dealing with the auto and trucks, so we are primarily focused on these two information. But yes, that tube is also capable of registering the bicycle as well, yes.
So you're not going to get a count to know how many bicyclists we have in Goodyear?
I just thought maybe it would help us identify more streets to put bicycle lanes on, if we knew. It's just a thought. How do we justify putting a bicycle, just hypothetical, of course, down Bullard if only one bicycler uses it? But then if we're counting on McDowell and 100 use it, then we need definitely the bicycle lanes there. I just was trying to justify putting bicycle, I don't know.
Well, since
I withdraw my question. Never mind.
Okay, this is kind of
I'm
off
sorry.
subject on that.
I just thought we should count those as well.
Well,
It's part of the traffic.
David,
It is.
Did you want to address that?
Mayor and Councilmember Campbell, I think right now, actually, Goodyear, in all of their arterial and collector street cross sections, they do include bicycle lanes on all of their major streets. So I think in some ways it's kind of, I don't want to say build it and they will come, but when you do start to provide those facilities, you will see more people bicycling. But they typically don't do those kind of tube counts with bicycles. A lot of times they'll do visual counts, or they have different kinds of ways of counting it. And actually, MAG, I believe, is working on a study that would offer kind of a standardized format of doing both pedestrian and bicycle counting, that the cities could use that format.
Bill?
Okay, this whole conversation about the truck routes and whatnot, we've talked about so far the completion of Bullard from, I'm going to say, Yuma to Estrella Parkway, that final loop, which will be completed at the end of this calendar year, which then becomes a truck route from I-10 to Estrella Parkway, MC-85. It also becomes the complete extension of Bullard from Indian School all the way down to MC-85. Yet we have declared no trucks from Indian School to McDowell in response to several citizen complaints. So we are, in fact, kind of promoting, yet prohibiting, that truck route from North Goodyear to South Goodyear. Does that kind of see where I'm going with that? In one respect, we're saying we need to complete it because we want to get trucks down there, but the trucks that are coming from North Goodyear down Indian School can't get there from there. It's my friends from the East Coast, this is like Maine. You can't get there from here. So it seems as though we're taking one step forward and one step back. Is there a solution or some way of fixing that aspect of the problem besides just putting signs up, which obviously the trucks are ignoring because those are the complaints that we're getting at 4 in the morning? Any solutions?
I think Michael will probably talk more about truck routes in just a minute, but I guess the approach we're taking is we're identifying the truck routes, and any arterial street or any street that isn't on the map shown as a truck route would be open to local trucks only. In other words, trucks that are making deliveries from a truck route to for example, retail center, or it could be a moving van or the like, but not the through traffic. So
if I'm moving concrete from the concrete plants on Camelback, I'm going to come down Indian School and I'm going to need to get down to MC 85. Bullard is the best option, and those are the trucks that are causing the issues for us. So it becomes either a matter of very large signs and significant enforcement on behalf of PD. If we're perpetuating the problem by making this an attractive, by finishing it. And I realize we're way too far down, so sorry for the pun, down the road to fix that. But we've got to, I hope, our planning are looking at what are we going to do besides small signs and a police officer sitting there at 4 in the morning watching the trucks. Because it seems to me we're inventing a reason for them to deviate from the truck route. So we've got to, hope somewhere in this master plan that we're going to be able to fix that problem to get from that we're now creating from Indian School South. I mean, I get what we're supposed to do, but we're making our own problem worse by finishing this. So I'm just kind of throwing that out there. I'm sure that there's not necessarily an answer. Can I ask 2 more that are from what we've done already? We talked about expanding the Gila River Bridge. That was one of the things that came up based on the patterns, etc. But the timing that we're talking about in this master plan is that is going to be completed around 2025, just roughly. But within 5 years of that, we are also talking about the South 303 coming into play. So now we're going to expand that. The city of Goodyear is going to expend millions of dollars to expand this bridge, only to have a freeway come through 5 years later. So I'm really be curious to see what our philosophy is on, because nothing screams typical government than to fix the road and then come back in a week later and tear it up.
If I may answer the question, Mayor Lord, Council Members Stipp, you're correct. I'm not sure the timing of Loop 303 crossing the Gila River. It's not in the current regional transportation plan, so it's not anticipated before 2025. It's a concern that would be addressed in the next regional transportation plan, taking it beyond 2035. But when we looked at the traffic forecasts, that additional capacity at that time will be necessary. So I don't know if that addresses your question.
Okay. And I guess we've always got the option when we decide to actually pull the trigger on doing the job, whether the 303 South has been accelerated or not, to say, yeah, it's a good decision or not. So I'm glad to hear that was part of that. Then the last question that I had, and this is certainly not anything you're going to be able to answer tonight, but I'm very curious on the last time we did estimates for traffic flows, et cetera, which I think you said was 2003.
2008.
2008.
Yes.
How have those held up? If we estimated in 2008 that by 2013 we were going to have 10,000 cars on a street, and here we are in that, have we measured that and have those estimates held up? Because we're talking now about trying to forecast out to 2030. And if our estimating philosophy is wrong, then maybe we're over projecting or under projecting. And I'd just be curious if anyone has that data or can pull it. I don't need that tonight, but I can certainly get that offline. But I'd be very curious to know how that plays out.
Mayor, Lord, Council Member, we started this study when the latest, and I misunderstood your question at first, the traffic counts we did in 2008 or rather the city did in 2008 were comprehensive, but the city has collected counts at specific locations since that time. This was a comprehensive update of those 2008 counts. But I think your question is specifically on the traffic forecast from earlier.
Yes.
And when we began this planning process, the most recent socioeconomic and traffic forecasts were not available. So we actually went through the exercise of looking at MAG's old, knowing that we would update that information.
Okay.
And in September, when Maricopa Association of Governments released the updated data, we did, in fact, do that. We went back through and looked. And generally speaking, the forecasts were lower, but the land uses hadn't changed so much that we don't anticipate that those needs will exist at some future date.
Yeah, and I realize forecasting and estimating is extremely difficult, so I'm just curious, are we within 5%, 10%, you know, that kind of range? Because it's never gonna be perfect. So I was just curious. Thank you for answering that.
Joe?
Just a follow-up was Bill was mentioning on trucks coming down on the Bullard. Do we know what kind of trucks are coming from Indian School on down? Do we know if it's typically the concrete that's coming down there, or do we know that it's the stores, the retail that's shortcutting them? Do we know?
David can answer that, I guess.
Mayor Lord, Vice Mayor Pizzillo, the truck count data gives you like a type of vehicle. I believe there's like 13 different classes, so it would know if it was an 18-wheeler versus the construction type vehicle, a concrete truck, which would be smaller. As far as whether it's actually specifically a concrete truck or something with a similar axle spacing, it would not be that specific. We certainly would know the 18-wheelers versus the construction type vehicles.
Well, I guess what I'm looking at, it's probably more for the police who have stopped, the vehicles on there. Are they the trucks coming from Safeway? Are they the trucks, coming from that retail that are shortcutting to Bullard? Because, I can appreciate the concrete issue, but I'm wondering how many of them would be coming down there 2 to 3 in the morning, as opposed, I'm wondering if it's the retail that's driving that shortcut.
Councilmember Pizzillo, it's a combination. And actually what we found out before, we get complaints every few months. We do enforcement details. We go out. The truck traffic slacks off, and it comes back. And this has been a regular pattern over the last year and a half or so. What we found is it's a variety. And in fact, last time we went out and we contacted McLean, it was some of their trucks and drivers, and they actually went out to their drivers and talked to them and informed them, and that reduced some of the truck traffic quite a bit. So it's a combination. It's not just one entity.
No, not an entity, but I mean, is it the retailers that they are going to? Is that what's driving it? The Safeways, those shops that take delivery, in the middle of the night. Is that what's driving it, or is it commercial construction, that's getting an early start at 2 and 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning and scooting down there?
It's a combination, but it is a lot of deliveries going to retailers. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Very well. We'll continue with the presentation. Please feel free to stop me at any time.
If I may, back on the truck routing, there's been a lot of discussion. I do want to just point out before we leave it, if you stay on that map for just a second, if you look at the southern part there, it's very important to point out a lot of discussions with our consultants and staff. Those red lines there are by design. It's really feeding the major employment areas if you can see where those are going. So MC85 is a truck route. Litchfield Road up to I-10, Bullard Avenue coming off of Estrella. We got a short segment on Cerevel that connects up to the area where Duke Realty, Amazon, those businesses are. They can use that to get over to MC85, Estrella over to Bullard, and then behind the development complexes when that road gets completed. We do have those dotted lines in there that they're kind of a temporary thing. They're still under evaluation. You see Estrella Parkway. We do know that there will be a lot of traffic there, and certainly on McDowell Road as a commercial corridor. Councilmember Stipp, you mentioned we're too far down the road. I did like that pun because my brain thinks that way. But the other thing is it's not too late to understand what the concerns are to perhaps factor in Dysart or Camelback Road. You know, if you notice, there's not an east-west unless you get up McDowell partially, but primarily on Interstate 10. So it's those types of things that I know we've talked that could still under evaluation. And part of tonight is to get input as far as where you're seeing concerns, and certainly the types of trucks you're seeing down Bullard Avenue. Those types of things certainly can come into play. But at the end of the day, wherever we establish the routes, there'll still be an ability for local trucks to still go do their business. So it won't stop all trucks. But the other part of it is when we do get these enacted, then we'll make it enforceable on the part of the police department. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear. If there are, I do know that, again, on the north part of the community, not looking at Indian School Road in this plan, not looking at Litchfield north of McDowell, etc. But we do know that there has to be some kind of truck route mechanism north of us.
Wally?
Well, they're using, Mr. City Manager, they're using Indian School right now as a truck through traffic going to and from the 303. And the traffic that's on Bullard, the one that I've seen, and I've seen them at 4 o'clock in the morning, they're the big construction trucks. And they're the ones that are hauling the dirt, and they're real long, and the dirt's piled up, and they're coming right from 303, hanging a right, and just zipping right down. And then yesterday there was just a big 18-wheeler. It didn't say Swift on it, so I don't want to say that, but it didn't have any markings on it. But it was a huge truck, and I knew he shouldn't be there, but he was there, and he had to have come up from probably McDowell. You know, so I don't know. The trucks are still using it. We just have to be vigilant, I guess. But they are using Indian School, and I know that ADOT is going to repair some of that damage that has been, or they've given us money to repair part of that road that those trucks have torn up, carrying the materials to build that 303. So when it all is said and done, is 303 going to be limited to no truck traffic then, City Manager? Or are we just not going to talk about it?
Well, I'll let the consultants talk about 303. Obviously, it absolutely is on here as a truck route. But there are a lot of maneuvering of trucks right now just because of how the 303, it's being under construction, et cetera. So some of the short-term problems that we're dealing with. And then looking at it again once construction finishes along that corridor. But I don't know if the consultants or engineering has anything to add to that.
Because, you know, Indian School goes right to where Sub-Zero and all of those are, to Cotton Lane, and it's really important.
City Manager Dalkey made an important point that a lot of the disruption of truck traffic is a result of construction, construction detours of Cotton Lane, and these things are all factoring into what's happening today, and it will settle out as these are cleared. But of course, new issues will come up as new construction projects come online. 303 will be a truck route going forward. ADOT would not limit truck traffic on the state highway system. So Loop 303 would be a...
Oh, we understand that. I'm talking about Indian School. It's not identified here as a truck route. Right. And that's the east-west that our city manager brought up. We've got to be able to have an east-west egress somewhere once this is all said and done, I would think.
Councilmember Campbell, as far as access to like the industrial along Indian School on either side of the 303, getting to like Sub-Zero or Dick's Sporting Goods or those, they would be considered local trucks because they're coming off a truck route, which is a 303, and they're directly accessing the industrial next adjacent to the 303. So where they'd come off Indian School and go, say, west to Cotton and come up to the Sub-Zero or the Dick's Sporting Goods, that would be local traffic, accepting or accessing those.
Okay. I just don't want to do anything that would hurt their trucks because they're out there for a reason, and I imagine some of them will use Indian School.
Right. And same thing when we have industrial development on the east side of the 303 on Indian School, Camelback. Same thing, they would come off the 303. At this point we were not wanting them to come off the 303 and take Camelback or Indian School, say, to get over to Bullard or to get over to Litchfield Road. So that's the reason we didn't show them. We consider them local only to the extent that we have adjacent development at this point.
Okay, thanks.
All right, shall we get on? This is now 5:45, and we have to start that meeting at 6, so go ahead.
Understand. I know that you talked last week about transit service, so I'm not going to go into detail on this. Suffice it to say that we're in close coordination with what was recommended last week as far as looking at your circulator. We have also identified some midterm and long-term recommendations for extensions of existing routes. And really, I think the important point with this is to, especially for the long term, we look about possibly commuter rail on the Human extension going through Goodyear. And this is something that's probably been talked about for a long time and will continue to be talked about for a long time because it's a private track and it would take a lot of coordination. But those elements should continue to exist in the plan to preserve that vision. And then, of course, looking forward to the next round of the Regional Transportation Plan, I think you want to have some of those transit concepts in your long-term plan so that they have some teeth when you, Mayor Lord, go to the council meetings, talk about the regional council and talk about the needs of Goodyear, and you have that in the plan. Right. It provides a little traction. So we will be making mid and long-term recommendations with regard to transit, but I'll end that discussion here. What I'd like to do now is just turn the microphone over, if I may, to Laura Patey, who's a landscape architect and has been focused on the non-motorized component of the plan.
Thank you. Mayor and Council, just to keep it brief, I think there were a couple of points I wanted to bring up. And the first one would be our coordination with the Parks and Rec consulting team. And then the other item was a couple of the things that we're looking at in the long term. Short term, we did kind of a window shield survey of the city and identified, as I mentioned earlier, your roadway cross sections show bike lanes and sidewalks, generous with sidewalks on all your arterials and collectors, and that is being done. So if you look at the term complete streets, you guys are already doing that. So going forward, we would expect those facilities to continue. In working with the other consulting firm that's working on the off-street plan, we're still kind of trying to figure out who takes, I guess, authorship of which facilities. I know that they are looking at, obviously, the off-street things on the washes and the rivers and some of the easements, but they're also identifying multi-use paths along some of the arterial streets. So, does that become an on-street facility or is it an off-street facility? Whose plan does it show up on? We don't want to have, two plans that somehow get in conflict. So we will definitely work with them to make that come together. But they are looking at multi-use paths on quite a few of the north-south and east-west arterials and how those would connect to the other off-street facilities, and then how those also work with all the bike lanes and the sidewalks so that we're not doing too much duplication. And then some of our short-term improvements are much more specific, maybe looking at some of the gaps in the sidewalk system and whether they could be filled now or wait until that particular parcel. It's usually a lot of small parcels that haven't been developed yet, and whether it's important enough now to fill in that sidewalk gap or wait. Some of the gaps in the bike lane system, in particular, an example is McDowell Road, which is a major regional route, and Avondale has bike lanes on their side. Goodyear has bike lanes on their side, but further west, so there's kind of a gap of about a mile. but it's a fairly new street, and currently there's not enough room to add the bike lane. So looking at some interim solutions so that, bicycles might still feel comfortable using that area, and then, very future project, if it was ever widened or rebuilt again, we could slip in a bike lane. Long term, some of the recommendations that we're looking at, we had the idea of Saraval, focusing on it as a kind of a non-motorized focused road, so adding in some of those different facilities that help bicyclists. You would have the bike lane, and then you would also have a maybe 3 to 4 foot striped buffer. Then the travel vehicular lanes would be narrower, and trying to kind of build down the center of the city to spine that would be a little more bike friendly. And maybe it becomes one of the streets where you really, we've mentioned, shade is really good, but maybe that's the one street where you might start kind of pushing for more shade on the sidewalks so that it's a more comfortable walking environment in the summer. So we were looking at that as one of the long-term recommendations, along with we've heard from the bicycling community that education, both for bicyclists and for drivers, would be something that they would really like to see. And that is one item that if you are applying for the League of American Bicyclists rating, an education program is something that they look at. And then also some recommendations for enforcement. Sometimes you kind of do have to be the mean guy and enforce rules on the bicyclists so that they are also following the rules that they're supposed to follow and not, annoying the drivers. Yeah, and I think there were some other long-term planning issues in terms of looking at how the on-street facilities connect to the businesses so that you don't get to a shopping center and then there doesn't seem to be a way to get in there.
Sure.
Those were some of our short and long-term recommendations in a nutshell.
Joe?
Any questions?
I don't know, just a general question. A lot of times you got the bicycle lanes that are set for and you say go on a busy road like Indian School and they may be 4 or 5 wide, kind of doing it. Is that one of the rules of the education that you're talking about with the bicyclists?
It would be, and I don't know that there is a set standard that says they have to ride single file, but that would certainly be an education item, that there are quite a few bicyclists in your community that would be interested in helping, offer their, expertise, and if that would be something in turn to say to them, you groups that go out on Saturday, we're hearing that riding 4 abreast is a problem for the drivers. Back and forth.
I think it was Sherry.
I'll be very brief.
Turn it on first.
One thing that I've noticed since we're doing transit with the bicycling, obviously people aren't going to bicycle, 40 miles to downtown Phoenix, right. But we don't really have, I notice you have storage in there or lockup racks. I think that's one thing with the mall, with everything we have to look at. If we want people to do that, they're not going to leave their bike outside. It's going to get stolen. So I think that's something we need to look at, because not everybody, if they want to take the bus, wants to put it on the front rack of the bus because they may have nowhere to put it when they get down to their location. So I'd like to see that interplay between the transit.
Okay. Yeah, and we have talked a little bit about some of the storage facilities, but we'll make sure that's covered.
Joanne, do you have a question?
No, I'll wait because we have no time.
Thank you.
Can I just do it real quick?
If it's if it's something we could do later, it's almost there, and nobody's going to get a break here because it's 6 o'clock. We have to start that. So is it a long question?
I'll wait till the next public hearing that we're going to talk about the transportation plan and bring it up then.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mayor Lord, thank you for that transition to our last slide. So we mentioned earlier that public meeting is scheduled for February 11th. It will be here at this facility, I think in the Veneta conference room, if I'm not mistaken, on the other side of the complex. But that'll be February 11th, and we'll be presenting this information to the public, soliciting their input and ideas, and then moving towards a draft plan that we'll be sharing with our advisory committee in March, and then ultimately back to the council for your consideration. So thank you very much for your time.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for coming in. I just leave one last thing is I would love us to be able to have a list of what the questions are, comments from the people that are going to be seeing them on February 11th. Okay, that would help us a great deal when addressing our citizens when they call on certain things. So, okay, thank you very much. It's a very important time in our good year and getting this right. And so thank you for being so patient with all of our questions.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
All right, council, what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to adjourn this meeting. At 6 o'clock, I'll be starting the next meeting. Meeting adjourned.